Hi guys. So now we're moving on to our next chapter, which is properties of the hair and scalp, which is chapter 11. Um, this is a little bit of an in-depth chapter. We deal a lot with, how hair, how hair is made up of, scalp disorders, scalp diseases, things like that. So it's got a lot of really important information. So it's a kind of a little bit in depth, sort of like your health and safety or your infection control, but it's still a really good chapter. So our lesson objectives are to identify and distinguish the different structures of the hair root, point out and differentiate the differences among the three main layers of the hair shaft, identify and explain three types of side bonds in the cortex. Name and compare the differences among the three cycles of hair growth. Give examples of common types of hair loss and explain what causes hair loss. Identify and explain at least three options for hair loss treatment. Learn to identify the most common hair and scalp disorders seen at school and in the salon, and name which ones should be treated by a physician. Compare and describe the different factors that should be considered during a hair and scalp analysis. We'll be learning how to do hair and scalp analysis, which will be something we'll be using with our client day when we work with our clients, anything like that that requires that we make sure that they have nothing underlying before we get started. So why do we study the properties of hair and scalp? Well, you need to know why and how hair grows and why it falls out. So you understand the difference between what is normal and abnormal hair loss. Knowing what creates natural hair color and texture is a vital part of being able to offer a variety of chemical services. And spotting an unhealthy scalp condition that could be harboring a communicable disease causing permanent hair loss is a way to aid your client in caring for their hair and their scalp. Basically, a lot of it has to do with keeping your client safe and keeping you safe, obviously. Hairstylists play an important role in many people's lives. All hair services must be based on a thorough understanding of growth, structure, and the composition of the hair. So trichology is the scientific study of hair, its diseases, and care. Derived from the Greek word trichos, meaning hair, and ology, meaning the study of. The hair, skin, and nails is part of an integumentary system, which is the largest and fastest growing organ of the body. A mature strand of human hair is divided into two parts. The hair root, part of the hair located below the surface of the epidermis or the scalp, and the hair shaft is the portion of the hair that is above. We're not just going to be talking about hair on the scalp. We'll be talking about hair of the body as well. So epidermis meaning your skin. So the hair root is below the surface of what you see, and the hair shaft is above. Structures of the hair root. So we have this actually very good visual here that kind of explains what everything is. So it's really important that you understand what all those parts are of the actual hair. It's the shaft, how it, like the hair bulb, the derma papilla, all that stuff. It's really important you understand the anatomy of the hair. So the hair follicle is the tube-like depression or pocket that the skin contains the hair root. The hair bulb is the lowest area of the hair strand. It is thickened, club-shaped structure that forms the lower part of the hair root. The derma papilla are small cone-shaped elevation located at the base of the follicle that fits into the hair bulb, and it contains the blood and nerve supply. The erector pili muscle are minute involuntary muscle fibers in the skin inserted at the base of the hair follicle, and sebaceous glands are the oil glands of the skin and are connected to the hair follicles. The sebaceous glands secrete oily substance called sebum, which lubricates the hair and the skin. Basically what makes your hair and your skin become oily. So what are the three main layers of the hair shaft? These are one of the most important things you need to understand when we do anything that has to do with the hair, whether it be chemically related, or anything. You need to understand how the layers of the hair work and what is in each layer of the hair. The hair shaft itself has three different parts: the cuticle, the cortex, and the medulla. The hair cuticle, which is the outermost layer of the hair, consists of a single overlapping layer of transparent scale-like cells that overlap like shingles on a roof. The cuticle layer provides a barrier that protects the inner structure of the hair as it lies against the cortex. The cortex being the middle layer of the hair, it's a fibrous protein core formed by elongated cells containing the melanin pigment. About 90% of the hair weight comes from the cortex layer. Protein structures located in the cortex provide elasticity. Changes to the hair from chemical service occur in the cortex layer. The medulla is the innermost layer of hair, and it is composed of round cells. Very fine and naturally blonde hair may not even have a medulla. The medulla is not involved in any salon services. My hair, as baby fine, like I say, baby bird hair that I have, I don't have a medulla. Most very, very fine hair does not have a medulla, but it makes no difference because it doesn't change anything when it comes to anything that you do with the hair on a chemical basis, because the medulla is not part of any of that. So again, here's another good visual of the cuticle layer being the outermost layer. The cortex layer is the fibrous protein middle layer, and then the medulla, the innermost layer of the hair. The chemical composition of hair. Hair is approximately 90% protein. The protein is made up of long chains of amino acids, which in turn are made up of elements. The 5 elements that make up the human hair are the Cohn's elements, so carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and sulfur. It's important that you understand that. 91% of the hair is protein, and then 51% is carbon, 21% is oxygen, 6% is hydrogen, 17% is nitrogen, and 5% is sulfur. Chemical composition. Hair is composed of 90% of protein called keratin that grows from cells originating within the hair follicle. Keratinization, the process during which newly formed cells in the hair mature. They fill up with keratin, move upward, lose their molecules, and die. The hair shaft is a non-living fiber. It's alive below the skin. That's what I think, the term, your hair is dead. Basically, all hair is dead the minute it kind of comes through the epidermis. It's only alive underneath. So just kind of like same thing like your fingernails. It's not actually alive, but it is growing because it's alive underneath the epidermis or underneath the skin. That's why also when you hear of treatments and stuff for the hair, putting keratin, protein, all that back into the hair, because the hair is made up of 90% of protein and the keratin. So that is what we're trying to give back to the hair that has been, say, overprocessed, damaged in any way. We're trying to rebuild that. Peptide bond is the strong chemical bond that joins the amino acids, or also known as the end bond. Amino acids are like pop beads, peptide or end bonds, and a polypeptide chain. Again, here's a fairly good visual of the amino acids, which are like the little beads, and then the end bonds are kind of what connect them together. Here's another couple of visuals. So the amino acids are like a bunch of different elements together. So it's plus, 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 and then they create the peptide chain. And on the left, the hair structure, strong links and weak links. Basically, they're in the cortex layer of the hair. So the strong links are the disulfide bonds, which can only be changed with chemical, and then the weak links, which are the salt and the hydrogen, can actually be changed with wet setting or heat setting. That basically you can change the structure of the hair, but as soon as you wet it, you can change it again. Where when you do disulfide bonds, you break those bonds. That's what you would do with, say, chemical straightening or perming. Hydrogen bond is a weak cross-link side bond that is easily broken by water or heat. Salt bond is another weak temporary cross-link that can be broken by changes in pH. They account for about 1/3 of the hair strength. The disulfide bond is a strong chemical bond that joins the sulfur atoms of two neighboring cysteine amino acids to create cysteine. They are not broken by water, they are only broken by permanent wave and chemical surfaces that alter the shape of the hair. Again, a couple of visuals, because I find that, it's hard to kind of take in all that information. But when you kind of see it in a visual, it actually kind of helps. So at the bottom, where it shows the hydrogen bond, that's the weak bond that you can, you can change the shape of the hair just by wetting it and styling it. And then hydrogen bond salt, and then the upper one shows the hydrogen bond, salt bond, and the disulfide bonds. Moving on to the hair pigment. So the natural hair color is due to the presence of the mixture of these pigments. More illumin gives darker hair, and the amount can vary from person to person, also on a person's head. Eumelanin pigments are oval in shape, and pheomelanin pigments are partly oval and partly rod-shaped. Gray hair contains only a few melanin granules. White hair does not contain any melanin at all. So hair pigments, all natural colors of hair are due to two types of hair pigments in the melanin. Eumelanin is dominant pigment in dark blonde, brown, and black hair, and pheomelanin is dominant in red hair. Both these pigments are produced in the hair follicle and packed into the granules found in the fibers of the hair, which would be the cortex layer, which is the inner layer. The wave pattern, which refers to the shape of the hair strand, is described as straight, wavy, curly, or extremely curly. Basically, a lot of it comes to how the hair grows out of the head and the actual composition of the hair itself. Extremely curly hair grows in long twisted spirals. Cross sections appear to be flattened and vary in shape and thickness along their length. The diameter is fairly irregular, showing various diameters along a single strand. Some extremely curly hair has a natural tendency to coil like a telephone cord. If you all remember what an old school telephone looks like, it's that very, very curly shape that, you can pull it straight, but as soon as you let it go, it pops right back into that. And coiled hair usually has a fine texture with many individual strands winding together to form coiled locks. It has a very low elasticity and tendency to knot very easily. Hair growth. So there are two types of hair found on the body. There is vellus hair and terminal hair. So vellus hair, or known as languo, is short, fine, downy, unpigmented hair covering most of the body except the palm of your hands and the soles of your feet. Women normally retain 55% more vellus hair than men. So vellus hair is like the little hair on your arms, your hands. Terminal hair is long, thick, pigmented hair found on the scalp, legs, arms, and bodies of men and women. It is coarser than vellus hair, and with the exception of gray hair, it is pigmented, and it usually has a medulla. Yeah, so it's important to understand the difference between vellus hair and terminal hair. The hair growth cycle. So like anything else, it has like a life cycle. The hair, as we all know, we all lose hair. So basically when you lose hair, if you're losing it right from the scalp, that's part of the hair growth cycle. It has a beginning and an end. So starting with the anagen, or the growth phase, nourishment of the hair follicle via blood supply enables the hair to grow. The canatin stage is the transition, where the hair follicle detaches from the nourishing blood supply And the third stage is the telogen, or the resting phase. Without nourishment, the hair eventually dies and falls out. So that's where you have, like, you know, when your hair falls out from the root, it's basically gone through its all three stages and is in the third stage. We all know what our hairbrush looks like when we're losing a lot of hair. Depending on what stage you're in with your hair, you can lose more. Depending on hair loss, can be so many different things. But you know, they say we lose quite a bit of hair every day. But you know, people with thin hair like me, I lose a lot of hair, but I still don't have any bald patches. I don't know how that's possible, but that's what it is. Hair loss causes and treatments. So there's a few different types of hair loss. The androgenic alopecia, so telogen effluvium, is related to severe stress. Women are more affected by this type of hair loss. Hair may grow back when the person recovers from the stress. Alopecia areata causes patches on the scalp and other parts of the body. Occurs because of abnormal immune system. Sometimes genes also play a role in this type of hair loss. And traction alopecia occurs when hairs are pulled out repeatedly. Tight ponytails, knots, harsh brushing can also cause hair loss. There was once a little girl that used to sit and twirl her hair to the point where she actually would pull it out from the root. And she actually had little bald patches where she would take that hair and wind it, and would actually pull it right out from the root. And they had to figure out a way to stop, because she was, you know, basically going to make herself bald with causing all this damage to pulling all that hair out from the root all the time. So, you know, it's important to understand the differences in how the hair loss and what causes it, so that you understand, you know, what kind of ways for it to be treated. 7 disorders of the hair. So Canites is a congenital. Canites is gray hair, considered gray hair. Acquired congenital is at birth. Acquired Canites is both premature and gray hair at old age. Ringed hair is alternate bands of gray and dark hair. And hypertrichosis is the growth of terminal hair in areas of the body that normally grows only vellus hair, as in on your face. Like the vellus hair is, you know, the very downy hair that you have on your face, upper lip, around your cheeks, chin. So here's some examples of, you know, Canites is the gray hair. Hypertrichosis is, you know, that's an extreme version, but I find that it's a good visual, so that you understand the difference between, you know, just regular vellus hair on your face, or the terminal hair, which is normally saved for, you know, arms and legs, growing in places that it would not normally. And then the ringed hair, as you can see, if you look closely, some of those strands of hair have actually gray and dark in them, and that's called ringed hair, where the actual shaft hasn't gone all gray or stayed its natural color. 7 disorders of the hair. So trichopitiliosis is split ends. Trichorexis nodosa, or knotted hair, a dry, brittle condition including formation of nodular swellings along the hair shaft. Monolitharix is beaded hair, and the hair breaks between the beads or the nodes. Fragillatus cranium, brittle hair that causes splitting. So here's some visuals of those. Trichorisis nodosa. At the top, monothalyrix, which is the node, the little nodes. The trichotip. I'm sorry, these words are still so hard for me after all these years. Trichotilliosis is the like split ends, and The other one is Freguletus crinium. Disorders of the scalp. So dandruff is called Pitteriasis, is small white scales that usually appear on the scalp and hair, and there are two different types. The dry type, which is characterized by itchy scalp, small white scales attached to the scalp or scattered loosely in the hair. Sluggish scalp is caused by poor circulation, lack of nerve stimulation, improper diet, emotional or glandular disturbances, and poor personal hygiene. Pitteriasis, the greasy or waxy type, scales become mixed with sebum, causing them to stick to the scalp in patches, and medical treatment is usually advisable for that kind because you can't really fix that without a specific prescription. Vegetable parasitic infections. Tinea is the technical term for ringworm. It is caused by vegetable parasites and is highly contagious. It begins with small reddened patch of little blisters, and because it is highly contagious, the client should be referred to a physician. Tinea Capitus is ringworm of the scalp and is characterized by red papules or spots at opening of hair follicles, causing the hair to break. So it actually breaks the hair off. Again, contagious. You want to make sure that you refer your client to a physician when you see anything like this on the scalp. Tinia Favors is honeycomb ringworm, and it is characterized by dry, sulfur yellow, cup-like crust on the scalp called scutula. It gives off an odor. Scars from Favors and are pink, shiny bald patches. Very contagious, should be referred to a physician. Scabies, which is the itch mite, highly contagious, caused by the itch mite vesicles and pustules from irritation of the parasites from scratching the affected area. Tinea Capitus is a contagious condition caused by head lice infesting the hair and scalp. Itching occurs and resultant scratching can cause infection. Again, those are little pictures of lice. So pretty, which as you can see, because they are clear, it actually makes them really difficult to see them, especially in light colored hair. So you have to look really, really carefully to find them, especially if they're very, very tiny in the beginning stages. Staphylococci infections. Kind of went over a bit of this in infection control, but again, this is now pertaining to things to do with the scalp, that if you're, when you're doing your scalp analysis, you can have an eye for these. So a furnicle or boil is an infection of the hair follicle that produces constant pain and a pustule perforated by the hair. And a carbuncle is an inflammation of the sebaceous tissue caused by staphylococci, similar to a furnicle but larger, and both should be referred to a physician. How to perform a thorough hair and scalp analysis. So the four most important factors that you need to take into consideration when you're looking at the client's hair are the texture, the porosity, elasticity, and density. The texture is the thickness or the diameter of the individual hair strand. So as an example, this would be, a thicker hair strand, where this would be a finer hair strand, because it's actually the diameter that makes us understand what the diameter or the texture is. Coarse hair has the largest diameter. It is stronger than fine hair, can be more resistant to processing with chemical services. Medium is the most common texture. It's considered normal, doesn't normally cause any special problems. And then fine hair is the smallest diameter. It is the most fragile hair, easier to process, but more susceptible to damage. So you have to take a little bit more care when you're working with anything from lightener, straightening, perming, anything like that. You have to take it a little bit more into consideration, because finer hair will definitely break much more easily. So the density measures the number of individual strands in 1 square inch of scalp. So if you take, 1 inch square of your scalp, that's the density of the hair. The average density is about 2,200 hairs per square inch. Hair with higher density has more hairs, obviously. Hair with lower density has fewer hairs. The average head of hair contains about 100,000 individual strands. Blondes usually have the highest density and redheads tend to have the lowest. I have very low density of my hair. Porosity. So porosity is the ability of the hair to absorb moisture. The degree of porosity is directly related to the condition of the cuticle layer. Healthy hair has a compact cuticle, which meaning all those scales are, they fit tight, they're nice and smooth. So when you see people with that like beautiful, healthy hair that is so shiny and never been touched by a chemical, that means that their cuticle layer hasn't been disturbed, which is what makes that hair seem so shiny on the outside. It's a little bit more resistant to being penetrated by moisture and refers to as hydrophobic. Porous hair with a raised cuticle easily absorbs moisture, which is called hydrophilic. So again, a good visual on the right hand side. So low porosity, the cuticle is more sort of upright and tight. Normal is open a little bit. High porosity means that the cuticle is wide. They call it wide open, which means it allows the moisture and stuff to get in and kind of hold inside. Low porosity hair is considered resistant. Chemical procedures can require a more alkaline solution in regards to chemical straightening or permanent wave. Average porosity is considered to be normal hair. Chemical procedures usually process as expected, and high porosity is considered overly porous, usually the result of overprocessing. The hair is dry, damaged, and fragile. And if you use anything chemical services wise, you need it to do it with a lower pH to protect the hair so you don't, give it a chemical haircut, so to speak. And you can also tell hair that has a really high porosity is when it's wet, it takes a lot longer to dry because it really holds on to the water. When you have low porosity, kind of the water almost like a duck, right? It kind of the water almost feels like it runs off. That's the difference. Elasticity is the ability of the hair to stretch and return to its original length without breaking. So if you pull out a strand and you give it a pull and you let it go, it usually goes back. If it does not, it will snap, then that's not the good kind. So normal elasticity with wet hair, it'll stretch up to 50% of its original length and return to the same length without breaking. Dry hair stretches to about 20%. Low elasticity, if the hair breaks easily or fails to return to its original length, it has low elasticity. It breaks easily, may not be able to hold a curl from wet setting, thermal styling, or permanent waving. Hair growth patterns. So growth patterns are important to identify and consider, especially when preparing to shape and style the hair. We've all seen people that have crazy cowlicks or, crowns at the back where you can see if they have like a double crown where they meet, it almost creates like a little rooster tail. So it's really important before you start doing anything, especially in cutting or styling, that you understand the way the hair growth pattern goes, because to fight against it, usually a losing battle. So hair stream is the hair flowing in the same direction, resulting from the follicles all sloping in the same direction. A whirl occurs when the hair leaves the follicle at an angle. The hair will lie in a particular direction, forming patterns on the head, which is considered like, the crown, which you see here in the photo, the young lad with the double crown. You can actually see how the hair moves in that circular direction. Cowlick is due to a particular pattern of hair stream on the forehead. Cowlicks are usually more noticeable at the front hairline in people with short, thick hair, but can be anywhere on the head. Again, the picture of one of the Jonas brothers there with his cowlick right at the front. I've seen cowlicks on the back of people's hair. When you're trying to style shorter hair, it can become very difficult if, the hair grows straight up and you're trying to get it to go straight down. So again, very important before cutting hair, especially if you're cutting it short, to understand the way the hair grows so that you can take that into consideration when you're preparing your style. Dry hair and scalp can be caused by inactive sebaceous glands aggravated by excessive shampooing or a dry climate. Should be treated with products containing moisturizers and emollients. Most people wash their hair too often, which means that they strip all the hair and scalp of its own natural oils, which are the best way to condition your hair and scalp. People that, here in Canada especially, when we turn the furnaces on and everything kind of dries up, our humidity level's gone. You see people's skin, scratching their skin and their hair. That's because we need to allow our body's own natural oils to come through, but we seem to shower and wash our hair so much that we actually cleanse that right off. Oily hair and scalp, characterized by a greasy buildup on the scalp and an oily coating on the hair caused by improper shampooing or overactive sebaceous glands. Treat with a normalizing shampoo. Healthy hair, happy clients. The more you learn about the structure of hair and how to keep it healthy, the more you will understand how salon services affect the different hair types. So for your homework this week, complete questions 1 to 137 in your theory workbook, which is chapter 11. If you have any questions, you can email me. Also, your test will be available online as well. Thanks. I thought this was very funny. When you see these clients, you will understand how, some people you just want to cut all their hair off because their hair is so broken. This person's hairs would be considered very overly porous, processed, dry, brittle. She pretty much has everything going on there. But I thought it was kind of a funny visual to leave the class with today. Yeah, any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, we will see you later.